More information has come out about that Trump assassination attempt and the Trump potential assassin. This was the one that happened on the golf course, and he was caught. And now the information is coming out of some of the other things he was doing, working on clearly with real motive to try to take out President Trump.
Federal prosecutors releasing disturbing new details, which state claims show Ryan Routh's apparent obsession with assassinating President Trump.
Routh tried to purchase a rocket-propelled grenade or anti-aircraft missile.
A fierce supporter of Ukraine who had visited the war-torn country multiple times reached out to an associate there. His request, send me an RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, or Stinger surface-to-air missile.
Writing, Trump's plane he gets on and off daily. Routh signaled his intent when he wrote, I need equipment so that Trump cannot get elected.
The guy's talking about blowing up a plane, not just for the former president of the United States, but for the guy who's going to become the next president of the United States. And that wouldn't have happened in just a vacuum.
Yeah,
had he detonated that RPG, there would have been 100 people killed.
Right, you are. It says he showed his destructive intent, Routh did, for other steps such as surveillance at Palm Beach International Airport and his active tracking of President Trump's plane and his stated intent to destroy the plane in his Dear World letter.
The filing does not identify who Routh was communicating with or whether it was actually a Ukrainian with military connections.
That almost always means he was speaking with an FBI agent or with someone acting on behalf of the FBI. But the fact that he still got to the golf course in Florida, even though he was caught, the fact that he got there tells me that someone was asleep at the switch.
He first tried to buy a .50 caliber rifle capable of piercing body armor and slicing through car doors.
And the motion outlines Routh's communication with a human smuggler in Mexico regarding an escape plan.
If he was deemed to be an actual threat to the president, and clearly he was a threat, a long-term ongoing threat, they should have scooped him up ages ago. It's better to charge someone with conspiracy than to risk him actually carrying out an attack and assassinating the president of the United States.
This comes out of a government filing that have to file within the court proceedings against Ryan Routh. And this is the government's motion to admit potential Rule 404B evidence. Now, 404B evidence is typically evidence that wouldn't be admitted in a case because it pertains to potentially other crimes of the individual. They couldn't just admit it for the purpose of trying to say what type of character the person is, etc. But they can admit this evidence if it pertains to motive and things of that nature. So they're trying to say this information, while it may point to other crimes this individual may have committed, is pertinent because it goes to the motive and other ways that this individual planned on trying to carry out an assassination attempt against the candidate for president at the time, but now president of the United States. And one of the most interesting facts, as we've seen from Ryan Routh's history, was we knew that he had been to Ukraine. We knew that there was some sketchy details there. But one of the things that they're trying to admit is the August 2024 attempted purchase of anti-aircraft weapons. And this goes to show that there was communication between the defendant, the failed assassin, who had been discussing with someone in Ukraine, an associate of his, that it was believed to be a Ukrainian with access to military weapons. They had discussed the prior attempt from Butler, Pennsylvania, and were disheartened by the fact that that person did not actually fulfill their wishes, which were to kill the president. But then they go on to talk about that and say that Routh told his associate, send me an RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, or Stinger missile, and I will see what we can do. Trump is not good for Ukraine, which led the two to discuss Routh's purchase options, with Routh asking about the price and whether his associate could ship it to him. Before explaining his intent, I need equipment so that Trump cannot get elected. He also goes on to talk about seeing Trump's plane and knowing where he gets on and off of it daily. So this was he had multiple different plans. There's other information we get into, but the most shocking is that he was communicating with someone in Ukraine saying Trump is not good for Ukraine and that we need this equipment so he cannot get elected.
His phone messages have come out as signal messages, and they say specifically that he was dealing with essentially arms dealers, it looks like, in Ukraine. No exact details of who he's talking about, because he said President Trump existing and winning could be very bad for Ukraine. Now, we know he was over in Ukraine multiple times, or at least spent quite a bit of time there, so that's not necessarily that shocking, but he was willing to go to messaging apps and really be very blunt and very honest. They even talked about how they were upset that the first assassination attempt was not successful. So, I mean, the motive is there. It's pretty strong. Whether they can add this to his case, I'm sure they'll figure out some way. And even just getting it out in the media, we all know.
Well, and here's what's interesting as well, is one, that it's not just the RPG attempted purchase from a Ukrainian, but also that he was attempting to buy a .50 caliber sniper rifle and other arms. He was trying to find ways to make this more likely to succeed. And he was a convicted felon. He had WMD, weapon of mass destruction charges, for driving around with explosives in his cars from the early 2020s. This was a convicted felon that was not able to own a firearm. So he was having to go through back channels and try to find ways to get these. He had the ammunition for the .50 caliber. But it turns out that he didn't have one that became available to him until after he was arrested, according to this evidence. But also, we know that this man was on the FBI's radar to some extent because of those previous WMD charges. He was a convicted felon, and even that he was driving around with an Uzi submachine gun.
But roaming around, this is where the justice system feels a little wonky, when these guys are just willy-nilly able to walk around our country when you know this is what they're up to.
Exactly. And so the fact that he was on the FBI's radar as far as that charge and having an Uzi submachine gun that sources had told the FBI about back in the early 2000s, as well as him having an AK-47 as late as 2022. This is someone that, as a convicted felon, that is able to purchase these, should have been on the radar earlier. So there's one, it shows that Kash Patel, I feel like, and those at the FBI, Dan Bongino, need to be looking into this as well. As was this person even on the FBI's radar sooner than when he was arrested in Florida? And if he wasn't, why not? And if he was, why was nothing done about it with the people that were in charge of the FBI at the time? But then you also go back to this, and it opens up so many more questions, because the aura around Ryan Routh was that he had this tie to Ukraine. Clearly, the people that were very pro-Ukraine were concerned about President Trump, but he was going so far as even using contacts within Ukraine to try and procure an RPG or a Stinger to go after President Trump's aircraft. That is not your typical run-of-the-mill lone wolf at this point. This is someone that's trying to
That's
plot.
not just a person, who's crazy.
Right.
They are crazy. You know what I mean? This isn't just like a one-off thing. This is someone who is having all these plans and conversations and had access to have these conversations. I think most people would not know where to begin to try to obtain a weapon from a foreign country. But he clearly had that background.
And I think it also means that lead needs to be investigated as well. Obviously, the Justice Department is trying to include this evidence in this case against him. But I think that trail needs to be followed as well. Who in Ukraine was he talking to? Who were they connected to? If this person that he was talking to had access to Stinger missiles and RPGs that he could find a way to try and get back, at least Routh believed he did, back to the United States, were those weapons that we funded, that we gave Ukrainians? And all of that to show, is there a larger conspiracy there within a network that he was communicating with to try and put a stop to President Trump's victory in November? They clearly were communicating that Trump would be bad for Ukraine. We have to make sure he doesn't get elected. This seems to go beyond just a lone wolf, crazy individual that was clearly able to stalk out a place on the golf course, was able to find a way, and felt like he reached a time he had to try to make this happen or it wasn't going to happen. But he wasn't just all of a sudden woke up and thought, I'm going to go to a golf course and try to shoot the leading candidate for president, and then eventually elected president.
We are so excited to announce the ACLJ's brand new app, completely redesigned to provide you with the best tools available to partner with us at the ACLJ. You can watch the daily Secular program, sign the petitions, customize your ACLJ membership experience, donate with the click of a button, and receive up-to-the-minute critical updates that the mainstream media can't censor. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to your phone's app store, search ACLJ, and click install. It's that simple.